All right, everybody, welcome back. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, I recommend checking out my website here, www.danceofthecosmos.com. All right, so what we're talking about in this video is we are going to be looking at, this is Rashi's part 2. And being that we're talking about part 2, what we're going to be talking about is how there's basically two divisions of Rashis. A Rashi is either a masculine or a feminine Rashi, and it's going to be based upon whether it's an odd numbered sign or if it's an even numbered sign. So odd numbered signs are going to be masculine, even numbered signs are going to be feminine. And so now let's go ahead and without further ado, let's just jump right into it and let's look at what this can mean. Okay, so first and foremost, when we're talking here about we're talking about masculine and feminine. What we're talking about is, now we're not talking about like male and female. We're not talking about gender roles basically, which is a lot of times what happens when we talk about masculine and feminine. Is kind of what we're referring to. It's like it's a more male energy or a more female energy. While that is true to a degree, these are more qualities, because masculine is a quality that is, masculine and feminine are both qualities that are around and exist has nothing to do with gender. You can have a male gendered individual who is very feminine. You can have a feminine gendered individual who is very masculine. So these are just traits and qualities. And so now let's look at each of these Rashis and let's see how their nature very much is that we described in part 1. Where we went into the nature of each individual Rashi, how it is very much reflected through this masculine and feminine quality, and can really give us an idea, because it'll really start defining things to that next level of understanding about these Rashis. So now, so we look here, we've got Aries, the first sign. What is Aries? Aries is represented by the ram. It's about being headstrong. It's about breaking new ground. It's about coming up with new things. And how do we do that? We do that by being active. And what's really important too is, I should mention this, basically another word that you could use for these masculine and feminine is active and receptive. So with Aries, it's a very active energy, very active. I mean, it's like, if you know Aries type people are going to be people that are just going head first, and they're not going to be afraid of things. They're not going to think about anything. They're like, okay, this is what needs to be done and I'm going to do it. They're not going to survey the situation. They're just going to, people with Aries sometimes can be very, like when we use the word headstrong, what we're kind of talking about here is that idea of like, there's no thought of the consequences, because I'm just going to break forth. I'm just going to take action. Now, then we come to Taurus. Taurus is the second sign of zodiac, number 2, which is an even number, which is a feminine sign. So like I said a minute ago, like feminine, like you can think of as being very receptive. So it's kind of interesting. You're like a bull. I wouldn't think of a bull as being something that is like a feminine quality. Well, remember, this is a bull that is adorned. This isn't just like your normal bull that you wave a red flag in front of. It's just a bull, but a bull it's about providing. About how we talked about in the first video, where Taurus is about providing for people. And we provide because we're receptive. We're receptive to what is in our environment. We're receptive to what other people need. We're receptive to what the value of things are. So that's how the feminine energy of Taurus is seeing what it is that we need to be responsible for, where we can get our resources at. We realize how important it is to provide value for ourselves and for other people around us, for seeing our own self-value. So we see this value because we're there to become, we're receptive enough to be able to understand that. And that's kind of the idea of the feminine nature of Taurus. Then we come over here to Gemini. Gemini being the third Rashi in the natural order of the zodiac. Gemini, that is an odd number again. So Gemini is also a masculine energy. So, which is kind of funny. So again, we were talking about the gender roles, right? Well, we have Gemini, it's a woman playing the lute. I mean, it's also a man with a club, which that's a very masculine, that's an idea that evokes masculinity, whereas the idea of the woman with a lute, well, how is that masculine? Well, a lute is not an instrument that's easy to play. Not that there's really any instrument that's really easy to play. Maybe a drum, but even with a drum, you have to beat it. So the idea is that you have to practice. You have to get involved. Gemini is about using our hands. It's about exploring. It's about actively exploring. Gemini is about diversity and it's about options, but it's not about just being aware of the diversity and aware of the options. It's about exploring them. It's about actively going through here. Gemini also represents the thinking mind, and the thinking mind is very much an active process. The mind's always racing. It's always going out, wanting to try new things. Gemini is about having fun and playing games. Very much. So that is the masculine energy of getting involved. So there's certain idea of masculinity as activity. So now let's get into the fourth Rashi. The fourth natural Rashi is that of Cancer. Cancer is known, and Cancer being the number related to the number 4 is an even number, obviously. So this is a feminine sign. Well, Cancer, if we remember, is a very nurturing sign. It's a sign of adapting. It's represented by the crab that can live in the ocean, that can live on land. And the reason why, I mean, if you're going to be adapting, how do you adapt? You adapt because you're receptive of the situation. You're receptive of everything that's in your environment. So that way you know, and you can make a picture in your mind of the best way to go and you can imagine a better situation because you're like, okay, this is where I am now. And either this is great and I'm feeling great here with where I'm at, or this is, maybe I don't like where I'm at. This is helping me see that, this isn't for me. And so you're able to be, it's a great perceptive sign of realizing that. And it's also, a big part of Cancer is it's a very mothering sign. And what is a mother? Well, it's feminine because you're receptive to the needs of others, so you're able to bring them more value, to make them happy, to make them feel more comfortable. And Gemini, Cancer is all about getting in the flow. And we're getting into the flow because we're receptive, again, of what's going on, so we can just kind of get right into the flow of things. And now let's look at Leo. Leo is the natural 5th Rashi. So the natural 5th Rashi here, we're another odd numbered sign, and it is again another masculine sign. And what is Leo represented by is the king. In the first video I talked about, I like to think of Leo as like the lion that's up on the ridge that's surveying his kingdom. Well, that is another way, and that almost sounds like a feminine idea, but then we're going to bring into the idea. So this is why it's important to understand all these qualities. This is why it's so important that you know that not only is Leo, represent all those qualities, presiding over his kingdom of royalty and dignity, but Leo is also a masculine sign. It's a sign of activity. Because if we think about it, so when we talk about the idea of royalty, we talk about the idea of the king, of being the king. What does a king do? A king takes action within his kingdom for what needs to happen. The king is there making orders and dictates and telling people what to do, and we need to do this, let's do this. The king is taking you to war. The king is giving out orders. The king is the one that is actively making things happen, to be responsible. It's very similar to that, to Taurus in a way. I always think of Taurus and Leo as being somewhat similar in that idea that it's being responsible, but Taurus is about being responsible in a very nurturing, caring way and making sure everybody's taken care of. Leo's not like that. Leo's being responsible by being active in what it's taking care of. And so that's Leo as a masculine sign. And then we have Virgo. Virgo as the natural 6th sign again, even numbered sign, feminine nature. Virgo is about making things better. Virgo is about refinement. Remember, it's the young maiden on the boat that's got one hand full of grains and one hand full of herbs. So what it's about is, remember how I talked about Virgo being, what's the word here? About refining, making things better, restoring. Well, why do you make things better? How can you make things better? How can you refine things? How can you restore things, replenish? Well, you can do that because you're aware of the situation. You are perceptive of what's going on. You're able to sit back and say, because how can you fix anything? How can you make anything better if you're not aware of what the problem is, of how you can help, And so it's not actively getting your hands in there. It's about realizing that there's a lot of things, that there's a lot of options out there. Well, which one is the one that's going to make everything better? Well, we know about this because we're present. We're able to sit back and go, okay, this is what is here, and let me now that I see the situation, now I can start thinking of a way to make this better. So that's kind of the idea of Virgo as a feminine sign. So now let's go to Libra. Libra is a masculine sign because it's the natural 7th Rashi, which is an odd number. And so how is that the case? Libra's the scales. Well, Libra's about actively making choices. Libra's about finding things in our life to make our life worth living. You know, that's about evaluating our choices. It's about working with others. It's about trade. And so it's about actively getting involved in this process. You know, it's about really finding the ways that are through there by taking action and initiative and everything when it comes to weighing out your several possibilities in life. It's about getting involved. It's a very social sign. It's about working with other people, getting involved in relationships. You know, it's about the marketplace. It's about being around other people, getting involved in trade, and making sure everything's a fair deal. Not by thinking about it, by actually doing. By doing fair actions, by being diplomatic, by taking diplomatic action and with others involved with the situation. Because we know that everything is a fair trade. Now, next, we move on to the natural 8th Rashi of Scorpio. Another feminine sign because it's an even numbered Rashi. So Scorpio, if you remember, is about the scorpion. It's about protecting. And how do we protect? You protect because you defend yourself. You know, if you were a boxer or whatever, how would you defend yourself? You'd get up there in the fight and you would be like, well, what's happening here first? And so that's why you take in martial arts, you take like your stance or whatever. But anyhow, so Scorpio is about what we have hidden down deep, because this is why I say Scorpio is a psychological sign. Because when we talk about a psychological sign, it's like we're looking deep down within us. And to do that, of course, is a very receptive sign. It's a very receptive energy. When we start talking about awareness and being like, well, who am I? What constitutes my being? What is it that I am made of? Then we will see that we need a definite receptive nature to really dive into that deep stuff. To get into the occult requires a lot of thinking, a lot of just right braining of the situation. If you're going to work in the occult, a lot of intuition. And Scorpio represents a lot of all of those energies. So now let's get on to the idea of Sagittarius. Sagittarius, another masculine, odd-numbered Rashi. Sagittarius, what do we know about Sagittarius? Well, it's the bow. You know, it's the centaur with the bow. Front half human, back half of a horse. And well, what do we say about Sagittarius? I mean, I think this is really simple. Some of these signs are really obvious when it comes to why it's a masculine energy sign, because it's about taking activity, right? We're setting goals. We're moving on with purpose, and we're really following that. We're not just setting the goal and like going, oh, what would make me feel better? No, we are like, okay, this is where I'm headed. This is where I'm going. This is what I need to do. And because we've got that direction, we've got that arrow pointed at what it is that we are focused upon. And then we come to the 10th Rashi of Capricorn, another feminine sign because it's even numbered. Well, Capricorn, as we remember, it's about the crocodile. It's about how we're creating a form in this world to find security as a material being by not having to change. And how do we do that? Because we know what is in our environment. We are aware of everything that is going on. And Capricorn is definitely, and it's about taking action in the world. It's about repairing and wanting to fix things, but it's not about getting involved in things. Because like Aries could be about fixing, or Gemini could be about fixing, which are two masculine Rashis, and what they're about fixing. Aries probably about fixing stuff because he broke it in the first place, because he's a bull in a china shop. you know, and Gemini is about fixing things because it's just getting involved in stuff. It's like, oh, what does this do? What does this do? What does this do? Let's play with this. Whereas Capricorn is about fixing the things. Capricorn and Virgo, actually, both two feminine Rashis are really about fixing things and making them better. Because remember, we talked about Virgo's refinement. Well, Capricorn is about waiting and being patient and saying, okay, this is what needs to be done because I'm going to see what it is, because I'm going to assume the form that doesn't have to be changed, that doesn't have to adapt, because my form is solid enough. And how do we create that form? How do we know how to provide this energy so we can take action in the world to make it a better place? Well, we know that because we're aware of it. We take the time to just appreciate the situation. And so that's how Capricorn can be looked at as a feminine energied Rashi. And then we move on to Aquarius, the natural 11th sign. So naturally, if it's the 11th sign, it's a masculine sign because it's odd numbered. And it's red here. We have red and green. Yay, look, it looks like Christmas. But I just did that because it's really obvious. If you're looking at this, there's just no question. You stare at this long enough, you'll just get ingrained in your mind and you'll always expect to see these this color. So now we get into the Rashi of Aquarius. What is Aquarius? Aquarius is, remember, it's the man that's holding the pitcher and bearing the load and making this world a better place for others. And it's really about that. It's about making the world a better place. It's not about seeing and being perceptive of what needs to be changed and making that change. That's Capricorn. Aquarius is about just going out and making the best, working with other people, you know, to do the best for your village of people of where you're at, whoever's in your situation that you want to take care of. It's about seeing that greater cause, and the actions that you take in Aquarius are actions of what's best for the whole, what's best for a bigger group of people that you are invested in, and making this world a better place because you're bearing the burden and you don't want anyone else to have to bear it for you. That's really the nature of Aquarius, is getting out, bearing that burden, doing what you have to do, and doing it for a greater cause. That's how we can look at the masculine nature of Aquarius. And these will make even more sense because I'm honestly, with a lot of these explanations of these signs, I'm holding back because I don't want to get into what I'm going to talk about in the third and the fourth Rashi. And I'm going to tie in more of this feminine and masculine as we get into the third, and even way more so when we get into the fourth. So now finally we move into Pisces. Pisces is the last Rashi, the 12th Rashi, the natural 12th, which 12th is another even numbered Rashi, which means it's feminine it's got a feminine quality to it. Okay, is that getting old? Yes. Thank God there's only 12. I don't know if I could keep explaining the same thing over and over. And anyway, but I want to drill it in. I want to, it's written right here, so I might as well talk about it. All right, so we know that Pisces is really seeing the bigger picture. Pisces is really about feeling connected. It's surrender. It's about knowing that there's a bigger world out there. And because Pisces is the two fish, right? It's the two fish that are connected from head of one fish, connects the tail of one fish, connects with its head to the tail of the other fish. So it's like everything is just a cycle. So it's about being aware that we're in a bigger world. There's something more to it. You know, it's an idea of resolution and completion. It's not completion and resolution by activity. It's not. So, I mean, we're talking about realizing all these ideas are just being receptive. It's just very feminine quality to it of like, okay, now I'm really in the flow. I realize that there's an ocean surrounding me. I'm just one part of the ocean. It's really just truly a peaceful, the most peaceful sign of the zodiac, in fact. And naturally, peaceful, feminine, receptive nature to it. Okay, so, and then what we can also see from this real quick, there's like I already explained how every other one, obviously, the nature of this, one is masculine, one is feminine. But we can also look at here, what we can also look at is we can see how we have, so the seventh house from everything, right? These are this would be considered exact opposite. For example, if this were Aries right here, if this Aries was on the western horizon, Libra would be the eastern horizon. The exact point here would be on the eastern horizon. You'll see here, and the same thing with Taurus. If Taurus was the western horizon, if you could look out and all was around you was ocean. If the earth was flat, some people might even still think it is. You would look out one way and it would be Taurus, would be on the zodiac. And if you could look out the other way, straight, directly the other side, it would be Scorpio would be on your other horizon. And so these are signs are opposite, and you'll see that these signs always match. Every time you look across, it's going to be, and this is going to be important. We're going to get more and more into this idea of looking at the Rashis that are across from each other, because the way that it works. Now I'm going to get into the houses a little bit here. This is kind of like a little bit of a sneak preview. So when we talk about the first house, so let's assume that these numbers, let's assume that this Aries right here is the first house. Let's assume that these numbers represent the houses as we're counting them. Okay, so this would be an Aries ascendant, an Aries logna, an Aries first house, an Aries rising sign, whatever term you're most comfortable with, it's the first house, the logna. So anyway, so if you have an Aries logna, Aries would be that point when you were born, that would be on the eastern horizon. And that would be what was rising at the time. That's why we call it the rising sign. And at the same time, Libra is the setting sign. So what the seventh house means and what the first house means. The first house is like basically who we are, where we're going, our path in life. And the seventh is where we're heading. So it's kind of like the direction. It's like, so when you have Aries, Aries is that initiating energy where it's like you're the one person doing it. You're breaking through new ground. Libra, it's like the seventh away from that is about the scales. And what you'll see here is that these are always, and you can see how they're tied together, because this idea of masculine and feminine always shows how if you have a feminine Rashi here, you have your seventh house away from it, that if this were the rising sign, the setting sign would also be feminine in nature. And this shows how that these signs are related. These energies are very much related energies. So that's just something to start thinking about, because we're going to dive deeper into that as we go along. I thought I would mention it now. So anyways, this concludes what I wanted to talk about in the masculine and feminine series. This is part 2 of the Rashi series. Stay tuned for parts 3 and part 4. Excellent. Thank you very much, and namaste.